we started the 5 levels of pleasure, right? And we basically dealt with the lowest 2 levels, which would basically say was physical pleasure. Physical pleasure is physical and material pleasures. And we basically discussed that really the Jewish concept is that we don't stay away from physicality. We don't look at it as being bad. We're not ascetics. At the same time, we're not hedonists. That we don't indulge in the physical. What we do is we get involved in the physical and we use it for a higher purpose. And that way we get pleasure out of it. That's physical pleasures. Enjoy the physical pleasures, don't indulge in them. And material pleasures is appreciate the material pleasures that you have. And we said that's really the definition of happiness. That if a person appreciates the physical things that he or she has, then that's what's happy. If you appreciated that you had eyes and you have ears and you have all the things that you have, that every human being is a walking multi-billionaire, literally. Even if you don't have a penny to your name, you'll be happy. Focus on everything that you don't have, and everything that goes wrong, you'll be miserable. But that's a function of really even appreciating the material pleasures that you have. If you really appreciated your eyes and your ears and your hands and your feet, you would be doing a jig down the street. That was physical pleasure. And the second level, the 4th level pleasure, let's say, which was love, we said, what's the definition of love? We said love is the pleasure that a person feels when you see the virtues of another human being and you don't identify that person with his or her virtues. When you appreciate someone is good and caring and sensitive and kind, and you feel those virtues as the essence of who they are, you'll feel a sense of love. If you focus on their faults and you say that's the essence of who they are, they're selfish, they're self-centered, good for nothing, egocentric. I hate it. The trick is to really understand that people have strengths and weaknesses. Their weaknesses are not the essence of who they are. People are stuck in their weaknesses, they're stuck in their faults, and their essence is their virtues. And you love someone, you know the good and the bad. You focus on the good and you understand the bad. You have compassion for the bad. And that's what we dealt with last time. So we want to go now onto the top 3 levels of pleasure. Bezos Hashem, we'll try to get through it. And so to get to the 3rd level of pleasure, there's really at least one prerequisite that I like to share in order to really even deal with this 3rd level of pleasure. Meaning the 4th level of pleasure, which is love, is what the Rosh Hashiva Rabbi Weinberg used to say. This is the pleasure that most people feel is their greatest pleasure. Most people feel that love is their greatest pleasure. That's why all the songs, it's love, 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 right? Love me do. Yeah. She loves me, yeah, yeah, yeah. All the Beatles songs, right? It's all about love, and it's still about love, right? Because that's when you feel a sense of pleasure. But that's what people are singing about, because they feel that's, wow, what a pleasure. When you feel in love, wow, that's it. You know, that's the pinnacle of living. Well, in Judaism, we say that's really only the 2nd level up. There are another 3 levels of pleasure. But this 3rd level of pleasure is really what sorts out the men from the boys. Meaning that it's not an acquired taste, meaning the greater levels of pleasure are all acquired. They don't come so easy, right? But we want to understand. I want to give you a little bit of an insight that should help us with the higher levels of pleasure, and that's the following. And this is something that this is one of the idea shares that we're going to give you so that you can share this 1-page document with your friends during the week and so forth. But this is something that Rabbi Weinberg used to say all the time. And he used to say the following. He used to say, ask the question. If someone would ask you, what is the opposite of pain? What is it that most people would say, right? Now, many of you may have heard this before, but if you haven't heard this before, you could write into the chat. What do you think what's the opposite of pain? What would you say? Right? So, I don't know if anybody's writing it, but what do you say? The opposite of pain. Any takers? Indifference, joy. Okay, we're getting a few here. Beth, health. Opposite of pain is health. I don't know. The opposite of pain is okay.
Pleasure. Pleasure.
Okay. Okay. So you see, that's what Eliyahu, I think it's Trenk, or Mrs. Trenk, is saying is really, that's what most people, if you ask most people, Mrs. Trank, if you ask most people what the opposite of pain is, they'll say pleasure, right? The opposite of pain is pleasure. Most people will identify the opposite of pain is something that you can't stand. What is it you want? You want pleasure. So Rabbi Weinberg used to say, to identify the opposite of pain as pleasure is the definition of decadence. That's what he used to say. Now, why? Right? Because you see, if you identify the opposite of pain as pleasure, right, then I feel if I really want, right, to get pleasure in life, then what should I go for? If pain and pleasure are opposites, I want no pain, right? I'm looking for an experience of no pain because pain is the opposite of pleasure. So I've got to get rid of pain. So what's the feeling that a person has of no pain? You know what it is? Imagine a person, you're lying on a beach and, you know, it's great. You're just not, the sun is beating down. You have a nice pina colada by your side. You're just not even moving a muscle, not even blinking an eyelid. You're just lying there doing absolutely nothing. You just got to be careful you don't fall asleep and miss the whole experience, right? You see, that feeling of comfort, what's that feeling? It's a comfortable feeling. If you think that really the opposite of pain is no pain, which is comfort, the ultimate, and if you identify the opposite of pain as pleasure, then what you're really trying to get in life and what you're identifying as your pleasures in life is that ultimate feeling of no pain, of comfort, of just not doing anything. And therefore, that's that's why Rabbi Weinberg would say that's the definition of decadence. Because if in all of life, what you're looking to do is just feel that sense of, I don't have to do anything, right? I'm going to lie on the beach. My goal is to have a refrigerator that I don't even have to press the button and the ice comes out. That everything is taken care of for me. Now, I'm not saying that there's not some benefit to comfort in life. It's nice to have some comforts. But if you identify that as your goal in life, that what I'm trying to do is just have that ultimate comfort feeling. It's, you know what it is? The ultimate comfort is sleep, right? I just want to sleep my life away, right? That's the ultimate decadence. Whereas Judaism says the opposite. That, you know what? There's a saying in Ethics of the Fathers, Lafum Sarah Agra. According to the effort is the reward, right? Another way of saying that is according to the amount of effort you put into life is the amount of pleasure that you get out. Meaning, if you anyone who plays sports, so you play tennis, a lot of people, we take people on 3-day trips to play tennis and golf and whatever it is, right? So imagine you're playing tennis and, you win, your opponent is really pathetic. So you win 6-0, 6-0, 6-0. You keep winning, that's great. You finish the game, you slaughtered your opponent. It was so easy. Now, what's more pleasurable, that game or a game where it's, third set, six games all, it's a tiebreaker in the last set, and it's neck and neck. Now, which one is a more pleasurable game? Well, obviously, we know the harder the game is, the more pleasure it is, the more effort it is, the more pleasure it is, right? That's all of life. It's true for sports. It's true for relationships. The more you put into your relationship, who are your best friends? The best friends are your friends who you feel you've really put out, or they've really put out for you. That they care about you so much, they'll do anything for you. They'll take any pain and put in any effort. That's your best friend, right? Or if you're working, right? If you're working, there's no pleasure in working in a job that's just it doesn't give you job satisfaction if it doesn't take effort, right? So that's all of life, right? Climbing mountains only is fun and a pleasure if it's a big mountain. If it's a tiny little hill, it's just not worth climbing. Mount Everest is worth climbing. That's why they climb, because such a satisfaction, such a sense of achievement. So this is true for all of life. The more effort you put into life, the more pleasure you get out. It's exactly the opposite of the Western concept, that really what you're looking for pleasure is to do nothing. We believe, right, it's the opposite. If you want tremendous pleasure out of life, you know what you have to do? You have to put tremendous effort, and that's painful, right? Now, the trick of life is Put in the effort and focus on the pleasure. Person plays basketball and runs around the court and puts a tremendous amount of effort in. If you focus on the pleasure of the game, you won't even notice the pain of the effort, right? But if you focus on the effort, oy vey, take away the ball, take away the other team, run around the court with no ball, I couldn't get you to do it because I've taken away the pleasure. It'll be too painful. I couldn't even pay you to run around for an hour, jumping up and doing no ball, no other. No. So the trick in life is putting tremendous effort into life and focus on the pleasure that you're getting out of it. And that's how to get the most pleasure out of life. And this is crucial for these 3 higher levels of pleasure. So we're going to go now onto what is the third level of pleasure. The third level of pleasure is called kavod. Now, kavod in Hebrew is translated as honor or respect. Now, let's call it honor, right? So, what's the pleasure of honor? You see, a lot of people in life are looking for honor, right? But really, that's the counterfeit. Remember, every level of pleasure has a counterfeit. So let's try and understand the pleasure, this third level of pleasure, by understanding the counterfeit. What is it that people are looking for when they want honor, right? What are they looking for? You know what they're looking for? They're looking for people to say how great they are, right? Isn't that it? You want honor, you want fame. You're looking for people to say, wow, Chaim Samson, what a guy. That's it. It's something. There's something we get, something, we're trying to impress people. We want them to say how great we are. Now that's counterfeit pleasure. But what is it that we're looking for, right? What is it that we so desperately need that it's so much drives us that we want this feeling of honor? What is it? It's the counterfeit of something which is real. So let's just understand it. I want people to think that I'm good, right? That's the counterfeit. Why? Because I can get people to think that I'm great. I can get people to even think that I'm good. But you know what? If I lie and I cheat and I get people to think that I'm good for some crazy reason, right? But how do I really feel inside? If people think that I'm great and I'm famous, I'm so famous, everybody thinks I'm great, but I know inside myself that I lied and I cheated my way to get there. So do I really feel good about myself? It's only superficial. It's a counterfeit pleasure. It means that on the surface, everybody's saying how great I am. Oh, wow, everybody thinks I'm good. But inside, I don't feel that sense of goodness really. So what's the real pleasure that we're trying to achieve? The real pleasure is not to get others to think that you're good and that you're great. It's to actually be good and great. That's the pleasure. Meaning this third level of pleasure of honor is the honor of doing is the pleasure of doing what's right. You get it? If I'm a person, I do the right thing no matter what. I don't care what people think, right? That's a tremendous pleasure, right? Imagine if someone could say to you, Mrs. Fedowitz, are you a good person, right? And if you could say, and I'm sure Mrs. Fedowitz can, because she's a very good person, right? But if we could say, and honestly, and someone and say to them, you know what? Thank God I am. Do you know what a tremendous pleasure of self-respect that we would feel if we felt, what is that feeling of being good? It's I am a person who lives by my values. I live with integrity and I don't compromise. That takes a lot of effort. It's the pleasure of doing the right thing. Now, you see, in Western society, that pleasure is often looked at as not being a pleasure at all. I mean, doing the right thing is looked at being, it's a pain in the neck. Do you understand? It's like, I don't want to do the right thing. Right? Doing the right thing is like laws. It's like I have to keep the laws of the country. I wish I didn't have to. Right? It's like shackles. It's shackling me. If there was any way I didn't have to keep the laws of the country, I could do whatever I feel like. Whoa, then wouldn't that be great? That's how doing the right thing is looked at being as a necessary evil. It's like taxes. It's like, I don't want to pay my taxes, but I have to. If there's any way I could get out of paying my taxes, that would be fantastic. Western society, we live in a society where doing the right thing is viewed as being a necessary evil. We look at it as being, that's the greatest pleasure in life to be. Why? Because what's doing the right thing ultimately? Doing the right thing means I'm being a good person. I'm doing the will of the creator of the universe. There's nothing more pleasurable than that, right? If you really understood it, right? The pleasure, but on a simple level, it's living with integrity. It's living with your values. Every time we compromise on our values, we lose a little bit of self-respect. So you see, if you don't understand this as being a pleasure, then and doing the right thing is a pleasure and living with integrity is a pleasure, then what people will do is they'll kind of compromise their values for fourth and fifth level pleasure, which is love and physical pleasure, and especially for the counterfeits, for infatuation and indulgence. People throw away the pleasure of doing what's right because they don't identify it as a pleasure. So what are people doing? A lot in Western society, they're looking for those physical pleasures and the indulgences that they think are real pleasures, but they're really much lower pleasures or counterfeit pleasures. And what I'm doing is I'm losing all the time that sense of integrity, that sense of self-respect, that sense of feeling really good about myself because I'm compromising. So imagine, let's take an example. Let's see, a parent says to a child, listen, can you come and help me clean the garage, okay, on Sunday? Like, it's an awful mess. So what does a child normally say? Now, a child will say, you know what, Mum, Dad, I'd love to come, but, he's feeling like, what can I do to get out of this? I really would love to come, but I made an arrangement. He's going to make some kind of excuse why he or she can't come. And let's say he can come. Let's say, I guess I'll have to do it. So you know what you're going to do? You're going to clean the garage and grumble the whole time. I wish, okay, Mom, okay, Dad, you owe me one. This is the last time. I'm never going to do this. What? Because we're looking at it as an obligation, right? We're looking at it as something that it's a necessary evil. Instead, now, when you finish cleaning the garage, how do you feel? Do you know how you feel? Look what I did. Wow, that's great. Why? Because once the effort is over, it takes a lot of effort to do the right thing. That's why I gave that whole prerequisite of the comfort and pleasure, because to do the right thing takes a lot of effort, right? And the body doesn't feel like doing it. We don't feel like doing it. But if you understand that really, according to the effort is the reward, and that really there's a pleasure of being good and giving and caring and being a good person, whoo! So don't wait till after it's over to say, well, learn, and this is what takes maturity in life, is to learn that as you do and you give to people and you help people, and yes, it takes effort, but there's a deep pleasure in that as you do it. Learn to appreciate the pleasure of being good. The pleasure of being good, if you can really get it, and someone could ask you, are you good? And you could say, thank God I am. Woo, you're a heavy person. And the opposite is very painful. You see, people in positions of, high positions in society who, God forbid, get caught doing things that they shouldn't have done, and they get put away in prison. You know what? They don't give people in prison knives and forks, because if they were caught doing something they really shouldn't have done, the embarrassment they feel, everybody knows I did something that's wrong, is so painful. But that's the kind of thing that, I'll end it all. Don't give them knives and forks, because you never know what a person feels, that sense of lack of, so everybody knows what I did. I feel humiliated. I feel bad. That's dangerous. So the opposite, when a person really feels that they're bad, right? That's very dangerous. You don't want that. So this is the third level of pleasure. Third level of pleasure is the pleasure of doing what's right. Now, it really leads in to a second aspect of this level, which is a slightly higher aspect, but it's directly related, which is the pleasure of living a meaningful life. What's a meaningful life? It's not doing something right. It's like you help an old lady across the street. That's a good act. You feel a sense of pleasure of being good. But if you can understand what is my life about? What am I doing with my life? What's my purpose? What am I trying to do with this life? And I live for that, right? That is that's a much deeper way of feeling this pleasure. It means that meaning the way that Rabbi Weinberg used to say it is, if you don't know what you're prepared to die for, you haven't begun living. What is, what am I prepared to die? If you don't know, meaning if you're just living to eat, and and you're not eating to live, what are you doing? He used to ask that question: living to eat or eating to live? Of course, I'm not living to eat. The whole purpose of my life is not how many chickens I can consume, right? I'm eating to live. So if you're eating to live, so what are you living for? Oh, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. You have to know. So Rabbi Wein would ask you, so what are you prepared to die for, right? If you know what you're prepared to die for, means you understand what's more than life itself. That's what will give life meaning to life. So most people, and just to get a sense of it, most people, to do the right thing, people will die to serve Israel, to fight for Israel, because they feel that's more valuable than their life. It's the right thing to do. People would die, to save their children because they feel it's the right thing to do, right? So because being good is more valuable than life itself, I'm prepared to give my life up to do the right thing if I have to. So if you're prepared to die to be good, live to be good. You see, but that is when you live to be good, there's a tremendous pleasure, because the opposite is very painful. Meaning, let's just take an example. A person sits on the beach. We'll go back to the beach example. It's very nice. You can lie on the beach for an hour. It's great. 2 hours, nice. 3 hours is okay. After 4 hours, you're getting pretty itchy. 5 hours, I can't take it anymore. I got to do something. Why not? If the first hour was good, why just do it for 20 hours at a time? Why can't? Okay, maybe I can do that for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. I can't do it. Yeah, I can play Space Invaders. It's very nice. I can do it for an hour. I can do it for 2 hours. After 3 hours, I can't. I feel I need to do something with my life. Every single human being has that feeling that I need to do something meaningful with my life, right? A person gets married, you marry a wonderful person, you look into his eyes, he looks into your eyes. You can do that for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. You're going to do it for like 3 days. It's very nice. It's very nice. What are you going to do together? It's not, marriage is beautiful, but it's a relationship of love, yes, but you've got to do something with it. You can't just look into each other's eyes and feel love for the rest of your life. You've got to feel you're going to do something. Otherwise, we can't live with ourselves unless we feel that we're doing something meaningful with our lives, right? So it's really the meaning to the soul is like oxygen to the body. We need it. If we're not doing something meaningful with our lives, right, then there's a certain point where a person's going to feel, so what? So I've worked my way up the corporate ladder, maybe, right? Even if I did, and that's what I'm 55 years old. But so what? What have I really achieved? And that's what mid-age crisis is about, that people go through a mid-age crisis because they get to a certain point in life and they look back and they say, well, so what? So where's that feeling of meaning? What do I feel I've really ultimately achieved? And I don't feel that sense of meaning. And it's very painful. And not only is it painful now, but I've got another 50 years, please God, to go. And I don't know why it's going to be any different. So it can be very painful. So that's why a person needs to understand that life is about doing the right thing, being a good person, right? Understand what the right thing to do. And ultimately that connects to the concept that there's God who created us in this world, and we're here to doing the right thing is doing the will of the creator of the universe. Ultimately, that's what gives meaning in life. Even a doctor who helps people, and I had this conversation with a doctor one time. He said, you know what? He was an atheistic doctor. He said, I can help people and I can save people's lives, but ultimately, if all this person is chemicals in space in the midst of the universe, what difference does it really make if I save his life? If he lives for a day longer, if he lives for a week or a year longer, ultimately we're just specks of dust. If you don't understand that a human being is made in the image of God, and our lives have intrinsic meaning because we're here and we can do the will of the creator of the universe, so then you're ultimately never going to really feel that deeper sense of what doing the right thing is all about. Okay, we went a little bit deeper than I was planning, but this is the third level pleasure is doing what's right. The counterfeit is looking for honor, right? Honor seeking, looking for people to tell you how good you are, but not actually being good. So that's the third level. Now, okay, we're going to go on to second level. What's the second level pleasure? So the second level pleasure is really, what is it that people will, what is it that people will kill for? What is it that people will slaughter, that they will kill? It's like, what's greater than human life? What do people perceive as being? And again, we're going to go from the counterfeit, right? The counterfeit pleasure. But
money.
What's that?
Money.
Okay, money, but it's not. Yeah, you're going to kill for money. That can be part of it. What is it that money can give you, right? It's more than just money. It's that people want power. You see, if people, that feeling of power, that's what people have. Regimes, a communist regime, Idi Amin, Stalin, Hitler. These are people. There's a power. When you feel a sense of power, right? It gives you a feeling of, wow, I'm in control. There's something very powerful about it, right? But that's the counterfeit pleasure. Obviously, that's the counterfeit pleasure. What's the real pleasure? And what's this in Judaism? This pleasure is called memshala, right? Memshala literally means power. But what is the real power? The real power is the power of bringing meaning into the world. It's really takes the third level pleasure and takes it up to the next notch, which means that the third level pleasure was doing the right thing. I'm going to do the right thing. This is, how can I make the world a better place? How can I change the world? How can I create a world of peace and goodwill and meaning and harmony and love? How can I do that, right? That's power that's real. That's power that's meaningful. Or even on an individual level, how can I change myself? We are human beings that have a body and a soul, right? We come into this world, right, as little babies with closed hands, right? And all we think about is me, now, and physical, right? When a person dies, a baby comes into their life with a closed hand. When a person dies, we open up their hands. Why? Because we're supposed to go through this life. And instead of thinking about me, now, and physical, instead of me, I'm supposed to think about we. Instead of now, I'm supposed to think about what are not the pleasures of the moment, but what are the longer lasting pleasures? What are the eternal pleasures? And not what's physical, but what's spiritual as well. So a baby just thinks about me now and physical. We're supposed to take that body that we have that just wants me now and physical and educate it so that we become mature human beings and spiritual human beings, that our pleasure is in we, not me. My pleasure is in spiritual and not physical alone. My pleasure is in eternal, not just pleasures of the moment. That's what you're creating, so to speak, a soul out of the body. That's the whole point of our existence, that I'm trying to create myself, right? So I'm giving an example of this. That's something really powerful. Now, how do you get that? How do you make those kind of changes? So how you make those changes? Those changes come through understanding. It comes through insight. So, for example, I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Archimedes, but Archimedes is famous for the fact that he worked out how to measure volume by water displacement. How did he do that? He jumped into the bath, the water went up, and all of a sudden he realized, you can measure volume by water. And as the story goes, he jumped out of the bath, he ran down the street naked, saying, "Eureka, Eureka, I found it." Why? Because he got an insight. All of a sudden he had an insight. He understood now how to measure volume and how this is going to change the world and physics and so forth, now that he understands that. if you had if a person had an insight how to the cure for cancer, wow, would that is powerful, right? So how do we change the world? And how do we change ourselves? You know how we do it? Through understanding. What is that understanding that we have? It's the ultimate understanding is Torah, right? That that Hashem gave us an instruction manual for living. As the Torah, as the Mishnah says in Ethics of the Fathers, hafachba v'hafachba dekulaba. Searching it and searching it, everything is inside. All the secrets of the universe are in the Torah. It's the instruction manual for living from the creator of the universe, which we said before. But if we want to understand ourselves, it's in there. If we want to understand how to have a happy relationship, marriage, parenting, sense of meaning, whatever it is, it's all in there, right? So therefore, the way and that's the same pleasure of, let's say, a person is an architect. So he comes up with a picture of the building that he wants to build. He has to have that picture in his mind first. Then he can build it. So if he builds it with that understanding of the picture of what he's building, that's a very deep pleasure because it's a pleasure of creativity. What we're trying to do with this level of pleasure is not just do the right thing. The right thing is put a brick on the building so you can build the building. This is a much deeper pleasure. This is I'm having an understanding how I'm trying to change the world. Now, change the world, change myself. And on a simple level, let's say you're spending time with a friend, and he's depressed, and he's going through a hard time. So imagine you go to see him or see her, and if you're able, now sometimes all that they need is a listening ear, and that's what you can give them, and that's a beautiful thing to do. But imagine if they share with you their issue, and all of a sudden you have an insight that you share with them. It's like, you know what? Wow. You know what? What about this? Did you ever think of this? And the light bulb goes off. Imagine that idea that can be life-changing for another person or for yourself, right? That insight is the pleasure of memshala. Meaning, if I give you a Rubik's Cube and you work it out, you're tickled pink. Wow, Rabbi Samson, here's a Rubik's Cube, I did it. Because that's a very low level of memshala, of this pleasure, of power, because you created something. But it's really not a very meaningful creation. Because, okay, Rubik's Cube is nice, but what did it really do for the world, right? But if you can help people get through their issues, get through their problems, that's not just a crossword puzzle. You're helping them with their lives. If you can work out your own issues, what about my issues? I've been stuck with these same problems. Think it through. Keep working at it, and you'll get the help from above. But so this for second level pleasure, which is really the hardest level of pleasure to understand, is the pleasure of creativity. Understand how to create the world, how to make the world a better place. Understand how to make yourself and others better. That comes with insight. Have the insight and live with it. So if you have the insight, like we said before, the insight of an architect, and then you build the world. Have the insight in your life. What are you trying to change? How do you try to make the world a better place, right? And then live with that as you do it. Make the world and yourself a better place, right? With insights and change and meaning. So that's the second level pleasure. We can, if you have questions or want to discuss it, that's how I understand it. That's number 2. So we only got a few minutes left, so we'll start on the so the counterfeit of that is that I want to feel that I'm powerful, right? It really is it's really the ego. The counterfeit level of second level pleasures. I want to feel that I am number 1, right? I'm number 1. I'm the most powerful being. I don't need anybody else. I'm it. Right? It's really the ego. It's like, and that's why ego is very powerful, and it's a very hard thing to deal with, because there's a deep feeling of counterfeit pleasure that a person gets to feel, that they're so powerful when they are connected to their ego, but it doesn't give real pleasure. It's not the real pleasure. Okay, so let's go on to the highest level of pleasure. And I want to share that, and also I have an idea to share with you, a one-pager called The Greatest Pleasure. So I'll share this with you, that, you know, an experience in my own life, that when I was at Aish Torah, and I used to study at Aish Torah in the study hall in the base medrash over there. And many of us used to do the following thing, that there used to be a fellow, a very famous person who passed away some years ago, called Meir Schuster. And we made a film about him, actually. He used to go to the Western Wall, and he would go around the old city, and he would bring people who were traveling through and say, would you like to see what a yeshiva is? What is it? Would like, and they might come in. So we would sit there waiting for Rabbi Schuster or other people like that to bring these people in, and we would sit down with them and talk to them. So I would do that. I would be sitting and I'll be learning my Talmud, and he would bring someone in, I'd put my Talmud aside and I would talk to them. And I developed a certain approach, and I would often say the following thing to them, which I'm going to share with you. I would say to them, and the guy comes in with his backpack, he sits down, and I said, tell me something. You've been around, you know, to Europe and to Nepal and to this. They say, yeah. So I said, tell me something. Did you ever have the following experience? You're climbing up a mountain, and all of a sudden you take a step, opens up in front of you the most beautiful vista, the most beautiful valley, the most beautiful snow-peaked mountain, sunset, whatever it was. All of a sudden you see this view that you've never seen before, and your mouth just drops, and you feel a feeling of transcendence. There's something about that incredible beauty that you're seeing that touches you in a profound way. Did you ever have that feeling? Did you ever have that experience? So almost always they would say, yeah, they did. So then I would say to them, tell me something, just between you and me. Wasn't that experience really on your travels? That's what you were looking for. That's what you go traveling around on, because you want to have that experience. You take that step on the mountain, you have that experience. Wow, that makes it all worthwhile, isn't that? And they would often say, yeah, how do you know that? So I say to them, tell me something. What is it that you think that you're experiencing when you see the beauty? That sense of what is that transcendental feeling that you're feeling? So, you know, just like if you see somebody's painting, whoever that artist is, you'll understand the artist through his or her art. The art is an expression of the artist. So when you see that art, you understand more about who the person who created that painting. So too, when you see the world and you understand the creation, it gives you a glimpse, a reflection of the creator who created it. It was the infinite creator of the universe. Why is it that you feel that transcendental feeling? Is it just because of the colors that bounce off your retina and all of a sudden you feel, wow? No, it's because you're feeling a sense of the infinite creator behind the beauty of that scintillating creation that you're experiencing. You're feeling that sense of infiniteness that's behind the creation. And that's what you're feeling, right? And that's an experience of God himself. So then I would say to them, you know what? You see all these people in the space medrash who are all learning today in study hall. You know what? They are all learning so that they can have that experience as well. We're all in the same game here. We're all trying to have that experience, because that experience is the experience of God himself. And that is the greatest pleasure. But the problem is, if you have to go to Nepal to get it, right? Or you have to see a fjord in Norway or wherever it is and to get it, then, okay, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. A beautiful thing to do in your vacation time. Lovely, right? I just spoke to someone today who's in Norway. I'm sure he's having a great time. But you see, the problem is that you can even be on top of a mountain, but if you're feeling angry, or if you're feeling jealous, or if you're feeling indulgent, you can miss the whole experience, right? What Judaism is about is teaching you, how can you have that infinite experience of God every moment of your life, and not in a way that you're dependent on the pool or the field or the vision or the valley or whatever. Why? Because if for example, if a person understands on a simple level, if you understand all of life, that all of life is scintillate, that a human hand is made up of neutrons and electrons whizzing around. It's mainly empty space. When I move my hand, if you really understood the xylem and the phloem in the trees, and if you understood the complexity of creation, it every single aspect of it is awesome. You have to understand, if you understood that, and more than that, if you understood when a person prays, right? If you pray, you know what it's supposed to be like when you pray? It's supposed to be like, you're connecting directly to the infinite creator, not just it's the creation and you're trying to get in touch with the creator but through his creation, but it's like you're standing on a mountain and you're speaking to the infinite creator. Wow. Now, unfortunately, what we do when we pray is we babble up, we rattle off our prayers, and we forget that this is an experience of the infinite being. If I could just slow down a little bit and connect to the infinite creator of the universe, it's more pleasurable than being on Mount Everest. It's profound. But what the whole of the Torah is an instruction manual, how I can get those feelings, how I can feel that feeling all the time, right? That's what a holy man is. A holy person is a person who feels God's presence all the time, but it takes a mastery. And that's why we have 613 mitzvot, commandments, instructions, 248 positive ones that bring out our positive aspects, that develop ourselves, 365 negative that refine our character so we become more sensitive human beings. This, through keeping the Torah and the mitzvah, it gives us a way that we can walk through life focusing on the infinite creator himself. And that's what the Torah is about. Is the Torah is to understand that there's a being who's a God, who's a creator, who's a sustainer and a supervisor. He created the world from nothing. He keeps the world going every single moment. He recreates the world and he supervises the world. He's running every single aspect of our existence out of love. What we have to do as human beings is learn how to get our egos out of the way, stop taking credit for everything, because when we take credit for everything, we block out that infinite creator, and learn to appreciate all the gifts and wonderful things that the Almighty has given us. And then you can live with that feeling of infinite pleasure all the time. And that is the greatest pleasure. And really all pleasures in life, right? We went through 5 levels of pleasure. We had physical, love, doing the right thing, being creative, and loving God. And each one helps you get the next. So if you need physical pleasure, which is the lowest level of pleasure, because when you feel physical pleasure and when you're happy, then you have energy. That gives you energy. When you don't have energy and you're not happy, you're not going to love people. You know why? Because they leave me alone. That's when you lash out at people. When you don't have that feeling of happiness and feeling of just healthy energy, then I don't feel like loving you, because just get out of my way. I just want to be miserable on my own. Right? Leave me alone. We lash out. When you feel happy, then it's easier to love others, right? When you love others, it's easier to give to them, to do the right thing. If I don't love you, what am I going to give to you for? You want me to come and clean the garage? You do it yourself. If you love someone, you feel like giving to them. So when you love someone, it helps you get 3rd level pleasure, which is being a good person. If you're a good person, then you can go to the next level as well. Okay, I know I want to be good, but what I really want to create, how do I really use my inner potential, my individuality? How do I express that? How do I really overcome what's holding me back? How do I help my friends? How do I help the world become and that's very exciting, because if you're in touch with the pleasure of doing the right thing, then you'll get into how can I really make a difference in the world? How can I really change myself? And when you do that, you're a creator. You're being creative. You're being like God himself, because God is the ultimate creator. So when you are creative, you can relate to the infinite being. You're on the same wavelength, so to speak. So therefore, you can connect to the Almighty. Really, what I'm saying in a deeper way is that physical pleasure, all pleasures are really because you're connecting to God in some way. Physical pleasure is because you're touching the beauty of his creation. You feel the goodness, it's good. You have a fruit and it tastes good because God created a beautiful creation. You love people because you see, what is love? You see virtues. You're seeing the reflection. What's virtues? Virtues are just a reflection of God's virtues. People are caring. Why is that virtuous? Because God is caring. When you're loving a person, it's because you're seeing the reflection of God in that person. So physical pleasure is you're touching the goodness of God's creation. Love is you're seeing the reflection of God in a human being. Doing the right thing, as we said before, is because you're doing the will of the creator of the universe. There's nothing more meaningful than that. There's nothing more pleasurable than that. That's the creativity, changing the world, is because you're being like God. You're a partner with God in creation to make the world a better place. And love of God is you're appreciating the virtues of God himself. So all pleasures are really because you're touching God in some way. And the counterfeit pleasures is an illusion of that. Because all of these counterfeit pleasures, indulgence, infatuation, looking for respect, and power, which is meaningful. What's the counterfeit of love of God? Psychedelic drugs, or there are many types of spirituality which are not pure spirituality, but those are all illusions and counterfeits. They're just illusions of the real experience of God. So therefore, that's what these are the 5 levels of pleasure. We're going over time a little bit, so I don't want to keep going. But these are 5 levels of pleasure. It's very important, and I reckon it's for you to try to review these pleasures, right, and to really become a master of them, the real pleasure and the counterfeit, because we need this for our own lives. We need it for our children's lives. People today are just pursuing low-level, 5th and 4th level counterfeit pleasures and thinking that's their greatest pleasure, and they're chucking out the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. They're not even touch with them, right? But we have to live it for ourselves. We have to be role models for ourselves. We deserve to get the pleasure for ourselves. And when you do that and you understand that, then you can help your children, and we can help the rest of the Jewish people have the greatest levels of pleasure, which is what God created for. And that's what Mesilas Yesharim, the part of the Moshe Chaim Luzzatto says, what are we in this world to do? Lehisaneg al Hashem, to take pleasure in the Almighty. Why? Zeh ha'tanug ha'amiti. This is the greatest pleasure. Ha'idon ha'gadol mikol ha'idonim. The greatest satisfaction of all satisfactions. Let's really spend a little time and realize that this is what it is. It's not that Hashem needs our pleasure. He needs our mitzvahs. It's all one big gift to us, so we can get the most pleasure in this world, in the next. Let's allow the Almighty to give us that pleasure. Let's learn to have it so we can give it to our children and to the rest of the Jewish people. Thank you very much.
Amen. Thank you.
If anybody has any questions, I'm sorry, I just, I got to get through it. So I started.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
Any questions, you feel free to ask. You can unmute it.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. It was amazing.